One of my favourite things about skateboarding is learning new stuff. I recently got locked into a hefty trick battle and it gave me a chance to reflect on my process for learning new tricks. Inspiration comes from loads of different areas. I usually get inspired by watching other skaters at the skate park or trick tip videos. Perhaps somebody comments in with a trick suggestion, or sometimes I have a couple of bits of skateboarding technique that I feel I could use as a springboard to jump off of and fuse them together to get the new trick. In this case, it was the blunt stool to rock fakie. I've been tinkering with my blunts over the spine, and I've also been practicing my rock to fakies. Now, I did have a little bit of a flirt with this trick ages ago, but there's been enough time for that to be of absolutely no use. I find the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it, particularly appropriate for my skateboarding. I've got a fairly modest bag of tricks and they take an awful lot of upkeep to keep in the bag. If I don't practice, it slips out of the bag. Once I've made my trick selection, I start thinking about a suitable piece of apparatus to try it on. In this case, I thought that a ramp that was not too tall and not too steep would help me get over my fear of getting into the blunt stool, and also if things became a little bit emotional and there was a bit of carnage, I wouldn't completely write myself off. Next up, I enter into a phase of visualization. I start thinking through the trick, how it might feel. I imagine myself on the board, trying to do various elements of the trick. Of course, in my mind, I'm nailing it pretty much from the start. When I'm visualizing, there's no fear factor involved, so it's just pure mechanics. And also, I tend to big myself up when I'm visualizing. The sort of tricks I can do about 5 minutes before I go to sleep. Whew, you wouldn't believe it. Of course, as soon as I arrive at the ramp, everything falls on its side and the stark realization of what I'm dealing with hits home, and I quickly reconfigure all my expectations. The final part of the puzzle was the gear selection. Which board should I use, and also would I need any safety equipment? I always wear a helmet as standard. I banged my head recently and whoo, it is not to be advised. So helmet on, and I usually use my Andy Anderson deck. I'm really comfortable on that bad boy, so it really helps me with confidence when learning new tricks. Anyway, enough of my yakking, let's get on with this trick battle. Woo-hoo. In the interest of full disclosure, I've included every attempt and a little counter. Oh my goodness, skateboarding is a humbling pursuit. This was a lengthy one. The main issue I was having was the fear of rocking the board back onto the coping into the rock fakie position. I found as soon as I got over that fear, fell off a few times, I managed to realise it was not too bad, and that gave me the confidence to really commit, stay over the top of the board. And then I found as soon as I got into the rock fakie position, I had my rock fakie dialed in, and that was not too tricky. When I'm working on something, I like to skate alone if I can. Watching all those attempts is not a spectator sport, and I also find I feel a little self-conscious just doing the same mistake over and over again. It's not always possible to get a ramp on your own, but with a bit of creativity and planning, I usually find a spot to suit. I also like to do quick fire attempts one after another. This gets me into a sort of hypnotic trance-like state. I really enjoy that feeling because I'm right in the moment, but I do find I can get into a cycle of repeating the same mistake. So a little trick I've found is to interrupt that cycle. This could be to have a drink, or it could be to use a new setup. And I find 9 times out of 10 when I change my setup, so in this case I was dropping in to try the blunt, if I just went, did an axle stall, and then did another trick and then went to try it in the middle of a run, that's enough to interrupt the flow, and that helped me to get a new perspective and sometimes can trigger making the trick. Now, I'm not a superstitious person, but I do get so anxious about certain tricks that little bits of superstition tend to creep in. Silly things like I always like to have my laces tucked into my shoes. I wouldn't want to do an attempt with my laces falling out. Obviously there is a slight issue with the laces dangling out, but this is more of a conceptual thing of OCD. I want the same shoe setup every single time. I also find if I'm getting really frustrated and I'm recording a trick, changing the camera angle can also trigger me to make one or two. I know there's absolutely no link with moving a camera and then making the trick, but I think psychologically, again, there could be some sort of break in the routine by doing that motion that helps the process come along. I find there is no better feeling than rolling away from that first make. I find I've exceeded my expectations, it fills me with joy, and I feel really, really good. And I think that's why I'm addicted to skateboarding. However, I made the mistake when I started out of just making one of the tricks and then, oh, I can do it. What I've worked out subsequently is that I need to move past the first make, obviously 2 to make it true, but then continue to make loads and loads more. If there's time permitting and I'm also not too fatigued, I just keep on going to see how many I can make. And in this battle, I made sure I made a good 10 or so. I found that that really helps when I go back for my next session on the trick. It just shortens the amount of time it takes for me to get another one. And I now found that my acid test standard, or whether I've learnt a trick, is if I can do it first try at the start of a session. During the visualization stage, I broke this trick up into 3 separate parts. As I make an attempt, I try and work out why I've failed, and then next try I try and make an adjustment. Now this isn't always possible. For some reason, I get locked in and just do the same mistake over and over, and that's when this break in the cycle technique tends to be quite handy. I come up with an idea of why it could be failing, and then I try that new idea. If that doesn't work, then back to the drawing board, come up with a new idea, test that. So it's sort of like a process of elimination until eventually I found that body position, that balance point, that amount of knee bend. I have to level with you though. For me, it's usually a combination of the line in, the speed in, the amount of knee bend, which is always bend my knees a little bit more. And the final big thing is the commitment. The time that I actually fully decide, whew, I'm going to commit. And that happens for me right in the moment. Before every single trick, I think I'm going to commit. And then as soon as I get to the commitment point, whoo, just involuntary jump off. And there is just one time where it feels right enough to commit, and 1 or 2 things will happen. I'll either come a cropper, and that will usually give me confidence because I'll realise, all right, it's not as bad as I thought, or when I fully commit, manage to make it. But for me as a skater, that rarely happens. It's usually fully commit and come a cropper, and then get the confidence to commit every time until eventually I managed to work out how to do it. Well, that's it for this video. It'd be great to hear what your process is for learning new tricks. Leave those in the comments below. You can also feel free to hit subscribe. I make new videos every week. As ever, my name's been John Bishop, and I'm a middle-aged guy learning how to skate.